Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Or if it's your first time, welcome to my channel. My name is Marlene and I talk about eating disorder recovery and everything related to healing the relationship with your own body, with food and with movement. And let's dive right into the topic as we always do. Somebody recently asked me, how do I know if I'm still in a diet mentality or not? And today I'm gonna talk about 6 reasons, and of course there are many more, but these 6 reasons are reasons that I see a lot in my clients or in people in the clinic that I'm working at, and that I also saw in myself when I was going through recovery. And reason number 1 is you're still labeling foods as good or bad. You're still labeling foods as unhealthy or healthy, because especially in recovery, but also outside of that, there are no good or bad foods. There is no value attached to foods. You're not a good person for eating a carrot or a bad person for eating a cookie. But as long as you're still labeling foods, it shows me that there's still an impact of diet culture. And of course, it can be extremely hard to get rid of that because unfortunately, we do live in a society where that mentality is so big and so normalized that people are actually talking about that all the time. I honestly am at a point now where I call it out. So if I'm gonna grab a coffee with a friend, they're like, oh, I'm gonna be bad today, I'm gonna eat a cookie, I'm gonna call it out. I'm gonna be like, depending on how our friendship is like, I'm either gonna make a joke about it or I'm gonna be like, no, you're actually not gonna be, like, you're not bad for that. I eat cookies all the time. Am I a bad person now? Of course, I wouldn't do that with everyone, but sometimes it is necessary to show people how ridiculous it is. Again, so if you're still calling things bad or good, especially in terms of like, I'm a good person for eating that, I'm a bad person for eating that, this is a big sign that diet culture and diet mentality is still around. Another reason that kind of goes hand to hand with that is feeling guilty after eating. Some people get to the point, and it's oftentimes in quasi-recovery, where they can eat a little bit more and they start to eat regular meals, but only certain foods. Only if it's like super unprocessed food, which there is nearly no such thing, to be honest. Like nearly all foods are processed in some ways, but I'm not gonna get into that too much today. But whether it is that, whether it is, certain ingredients, whether it is, okay, I can have a food that has the same amount of energy, but it can't be pizza, it has to be something else. So feeling guilty after eating is another sign that the diet mentality is still there, because your body needs the energy. The only thing to feel guilty for is if you stole that food or if you hurt somebody to get that food. But you don't have to feel guilty for eating certain foods. And again, I know it's way easier said than done, and I'm not saying that you have to go from the diet mentality to this new mentality overnight. That's not how it works. But it is a sign to work on that a little bit more, because the more that mentality sticks around, the more it can get in the way of your recovery. Next one is a very, very big one, and it is external rules over internal cues. And I think the sentence itself, describes it very well already, but I'm still gonna elaborate on that. So if your cues, your appetite, your hunger cues, your cravings say, I need chocolate right now, but your external rule is no chocolate before 4 p.m. or just a certain amount of chocolate and I had it already, or no chocolate at all, then it is a big sign for diet mentality and diet culture. The same thing can happen with other things, like, oh, I actually really crave something carby right now. It is often a sign that your body just needs a certain type of energy that can be broken down very quickly. But your rule is, oh, I've had too many carbs already today, or I told myself to eat more protein for lunch, but your body is showing you something different. That's a very, very big one, because that's something that also people who are not actually in recovery struggle with, but we see it with a lot of people who are somehow involved in diet culture. I do it in people who are not struggling with an eating disorder, but who definitely have certain rules. And I personally think when external rules go over internal cues, where your body is clearly showing you, hey, I really need this energy right now, I really need those carbs right now, and those are the people that feel it later in the day, that will crash 2 hours after lunch and be like, I don't know why I'm so tired, I don't know why I have no energy. And internally I think to myself, it's probably because you didn't have enough carbs. But again, it's not that easy, and I don't want to make it appear like it is, but it is another sign that the diet mentality is still around. And the next one is avoiding certain certain foods completely. Now, if you're allergic, of course, we don't even have to talk about that. But if you're not allergic to something and you're avoiding it completely, either because you're afraid of losing control around that food, which is, as we all know, never a discipline thing. It is more like restriction leads to feeling out of control around foods. Or whether it is, oh, I can never eat that food, it is bad, where like food labeling comes in, I will feel guilty, where like Reasonomic 2 comes in, or whether it's another reason. Some people have a lot of fear foods and they just like wait way too long to challenge them. And of course, it is individual. I'm not the kind of person that's like, oh, you have to challenge all your fear foods in the first week, because challenging fear foods is different for everyone. For some people, it's just a certain amount that is challenging. They can have a slice of pizza, but not the whole pizza. For some people, it is challenging to like do it over and over again. They might have challenged their fear food once, but then they didn't do it for another 3 months. And so it kind of like stays in that fear food range. But whenever you're completely avoiding certain foods or certain food groups for reasons that are not allergy or like, you know, health related in a way where you like really cannot have that food for medical reasons, it's another sign for me that the diet mentality might still stick around. The next one is something that we might also see in a lot of people who might not be aware that they also struggle with a little bit of a disordered relationship to their body and to food. That is earn or burn foods. So when somebody feels like they have to earn their food, they have to get a workout in because they will have a special meal later, or they had something for dinner and so the next day they feel like, oh, I have to make up for that. That is a disordered behavior. And I do know that we normalize it in our society, but honestly, it is not normal. It is a big sign that the diet mentality is still sticking around, and especially in eating disorder recovery. And this is where it becomes very tricky, where unfortunately sometimes not even dietitians or psychotherapists or also some coaches might not be aware. If you tell me as my client, oh, I challenged this fear food yesterday, I had it for dinner, I'm gonna be super proud of you. But I also want to know the whole story. Because if you then continue to tell me, oh, I actually like worked out 2 hours before and this morning I also had a smaller breakfast, then I'm gonna be like, this was not really challenging your fear food. And I do not do that to make you angry or to be annoying, but because I know how it goes. When I was in eating disorder recovery, I did those things all the time. I like pretended like I was challenging something and everyone around me was like, oh, she's eating that, so that's fine. And nobody was really aware what was going on. That was actually not fine, because I still felt like I had to earn or to burn my calories or my food. And so that was actually standing in the way of my full recovery. And that's why I'm pointing it out. The next one is probably the biggest one, and that is wanting to recover but not wanting to gain weight. And I know that this is such a tough one. I was there, many of my clients were there, many of my patients are there, and you might be there too, or you might have been there in the past. A lot of people actually do want to recover. They don't want to go through everything that comes with an eating disorder anymore. They don't want to over-exercise. They don't want to starve themselves. They want to be free around food. They want to be able to be spontaneous. They want to have a better relationship to their body, but they do not want to gain weight. And unfortunately, that is something that we just cannot control. As long as you try to control your weight, it will stand in the way of your recovery. Because you have to let go of like wanting to be in a smaller body at all chances. I can't tell you what your body will do. Everybody is different. And whatever will happen will happen. But wanting to control your body size and not wanting to gain weight is a big one, because you might feel like, oh, I want recovery, I'm ready to, and so you might also find yourself in quasi-recovery again, where you still work out too much or eat too little, where you still have food rules, but you're like, oh, I want recovery. And that can also be something that tricks people, that tricks doctors, dietitians, therapists, coaches. And this is like so important for me to point out, because I want to support you on like true and real and full recovery. I don't want you to stick to quasi-recovery for the next 20 years and then regret it. So yes, it is super uncomfortable, but letting go of not wanting to gain weight, or at least that like accepting it. I'm not saying that you have to want it. I'm not even saying that you should be somebody who's like, oh, I really want to gain weight. If that's the case, awesome. but just accepting it, being like, I don't want it, but I know that it can happen, and therefore I still choose recovery, is a great approach. It doesn't always have to go into one extreme, like love it or hate it. You can also not like it and still accept it. So I really hope this video helped you to answer that question a little bit better. Let me know in the comments if you have any other regions where you're not sure if that's like diet mentality or not. And as always, let me know if you have any other questions, and I will see you in the next one.